Welcome to the podcast, Tim.
Thank you very much. It's
Yeah,
an
this
honor
is
to be here.
we talk about all the time with people. We talk art every day, and yet we put a microphone in front of people, and it just kind of they freak out.
I may not be able to do this.
So you talked about art last night at the Museum of Western Art at a little art talk about the current exhibition, Two Perspectives, Scott Christensen and Quang Ho. And tell me why you came to all the way to Kerrville, Texas, to see that particular exhibition, all the way from Cody, Wyoming.
They are two of the greatest guys that I know and two of the greatest artists that I know. And I'm fortunate to have been longtime friends with both Scott and Quang. And we've collected their work and we've included them in shows that I've run. And I couldn't come to the opening. I was obligated to be at a wedding. And I just knew that I did not want to let this opportunity to pass to see so many works by these two greats. So I determined to come, and I called you and said, when's a good time to come? And you said, end of the month. And I had previously said in a Facebook post that I thought this was indeed the blockbuster art show in America for the summer of 2024. And I thought, I guess that's a place to go to and see. And
Yeah, at least you got to go see what you talked about, right?
see if I was right.
Did it meet your expectations?
It exceeded my expectations. I just, virtually brought me to tears to see the magnificence of the work and the accomplishment of these two giants.
Yeah, they're pretty good. So the show's called, for those of you playing along at home, it's Two Perspectives. So Scott Christensen and Quang Ho, or as we gently started calling it, Scott Christensen and the 50 Personalities of Quang Ho. They're both interesting guys, and we'll talk about them here in just a second, some more. But for those of you who don't know, Tim Newton is the publisher emeritus of Western Art and Architecture. I always try to make sure I get that.
Sometimes it's just not easy.
It's just Western Art and Architecture. It's a fabulous magazine, has been for a number of years. And you were the publisher of that magazine for how many years?
5 years.
5 years.
Yeah.
And so that's a lot of people know Tim from that. You have a huge Facebook following as well, and Instagram and all of that.
And even though I'm emeritus, I'm still very involved with the magazine.
Are you?
Yeah. I talk to my editor a few times a month, and she's terrific. And because I'm out and about in the art community a lot, then I'm able to feed good information back to the team there.
What does a publisher of a magazine do?
That's what I said when I got the offer to become the publisher.
Yeah.
In this case, I think I came out of a whole other world. I was very involved in the art world in New York at the Salmagundi Club, but I was a kitchen remodeler.
Is that the more appropriate place to start with your story? Is that you were a kitchen remodeler in
That's the spot.
Long Island, New York?
That's right. Yeah. And
how does a kitchen remodeler become a giant in the art world, in the Western art world especially?
Well, you speak very loosely.
Yeah. I think it's pretty appropriate. 70 people showed up last night to hear you talk about art.
I was honored for sure. Well, so the backstory is that I was born and raised in the West, born in Longmont, Colorado, and lived there and in Torrington, Wyoming, and Scottsbluff, Nebraska, and back to Longmont. So I'm a Western boy.
Okay.
But went to New York long ago in 76 and worked to help start a church there. And I had a friend in the church that was in the kitchen business, and he wanted me to come to work for him, and that got me started there. But we came west. Starting really in 1991, good friends of ours I came to visit them and started going to Western art shows, and everywhere, all of them. There was not a Western art show that I didn't attend. So I just got bit by the art bug. I had bought a sketch from cowboy artist Gary Carter in
it's a great
September of 91. A beautiful sketch, still hangs. Actually, it's so good that it's a large piece, 24 by 36, I think, and it is just 1836, beautiful painting or drawing, powerful, and a couple of mountain men in front of Mount Moran on horseback, galloping at full tilt down to their mountain rendezvous on the Snake River. And that was the beginning, and I knew it was the beginning. There was something that came.
You knew it was a bug right then. Yeah,
I was done. I just knew, and I started buying prints.
Sure.
That's what I could afford. I didn't really have money. I'm not a person that comes from money, and I probably have 120 prints all in over about 5-6 years of buying. And then our friends there said, "There's this show in Jackson at the Wildlife Museum, and you should come to that." And instead of coming to our place, and so we went there, and the small works were affordable, $1,000, $1,200 maybe. 25, and we were able to buy small works, and that just really launched a total art addiction. I'm in Artaholics Anonymous, and not
Hi, my name is Darrell. I'm an art addict. Yeah.
That's right.
Hi, Darrell. Yeah, glad to meet you, Tim.
Yeah, so that was the beginning, and the really neatest part of this is maybe the most amazing part of my life story in the arts is returning from Jackson. So we went to that show 25 times, and on the way home from Jackson in 2002, flew out of there, went to the Dallas airport, and moved over to the LaGuardia Gate, and I'm there and look across the room, and there's a guy facing me in the other aisle. It opened up a catalog from Arts for the Parks, which was concurrent in Jackson during that time. And I went over and spoke to him. I said, wow, you must have been in Jackson. He said, yeah, I'm an artist, whatnot. We spoke a bit. And then when we got on the plane, he walked past our seat. And I said, well, where are you seated? And he said, I'm in 28F. And I said, when we get airborne, I'll come back and then maybe we can just talk. I've always loved to talk art.
Sure.
So that was Delberet Bach was his name, is his name. Great guy, great artist.
Mm-hmm.
And I sat with him somewhere across Arkansas, and he said, have you ever been to the Salmagundi Club? And I said, Salma what? It was a strange name. And
it is a strange name.
With Art Club on, on Fifth Avenue,
Fifth Avenue
in Manhattan, and elegant brownstone mansion, and elegant. So he said, you should come and visit, and we'll buy you dinner. You and your wife come to the auction, and that's the rest of my life right there in the airport. And here's the thing. If he would have been facing the other direction, if he wouldn't have opened that catalog,
you might still be a kitchen remodeler.
I'd be retired, but I wouldn't be in the art world. Not
at the level you are, yeah.
Not at all. I got to the club, and the very historic art club started in 1871. Am I talking too much?
No, man, keep going. Okay. We're good. It's art. Let's talk about it. Yeah.
Great history of the greats in American art in the 1880s and early 1900s were all members at the club. It was a social club that had dining, art exhibitions, and I was going to there. I joined the club the night I went in there. That I was just mesmerized by the building and the history. And along the way, I probably became a little frustrated with some of the art that they were showing. It was not at the level of the historic art that happened there in 1900, 1910. The members there were some of the greats that you know, Frank Tenney Johnson, Carl Rungus. Thomas Moran was the 4th president of the club. It was like this was who's who.
The Hudson River guys.
Yeah, all those guys. And a lot of those guys that had come west, a lot of those guys. That would include every single one of the Taos founders of the Taos Society. They were at the club. And then they were coming west. It was their New York connection, and then they would travel west in the summer and springtime. And anyway, I got there and I was going to these art shows out here in the West, and then being a little frustrated that it wasn't all what it could have been, should have been. And so I proposed to have a art show there that would be an invitational, and I would do the inviting, rather,
kind of pretentious of you.
Of me.
Yeah, that's right.
Who would I think? I believe me, I was nobody, but I knew people, and I just knew the right people. And so I'd ask everybody, Clyde Aspavig, Sherry McGraw, David LaFell, great painters of the West, Grant Redden. It was a long,
and many of them remain your friends to this day.
That's right.
Yeah, David LaFell I saw recently.
Yeah, we're very close with David and Sherry. Oh, in fact, she's there at our house right now in Santa Fe. But in any case, I went to the leadership at the club. I was the president and the chairman of the board, and I said, I'd like to propose doing a show. It basically copies the big shows, the big art shows out west, the museum shows, etc. And they're like, okay, who are you? Aren't you a kitchen remodeler? But I had spoken with several of those folks in advance of meeting with that leadership.
Right.
Say, these folks say they will come. If you build it, we will come.
Sure.
And so they said, give us a week and we'll let you know. And they let me know a week later. They said, okay, we'll give you 11 days in May in 2008. And it was about a year in advance. And so okay, fine. And I was naive enough to think that I just thought, yeah, I can do this. And it was really all about the caliber of the artists that had agreed to be in it. I wanted it to be a who's who, and it certainly was. 11 days in May. I had the one thing I said after they gave me the go-ahead, I said, I'd like to the intention of the monies raised, and I was not getting a penny. It was all completely volunteer. And I said, I would like to, can we allow this money to begin a fund to raise money to renovate the gallery? Because after they gave me the yes on the show, I walked back into the gallery and I thought, oh man, this is decrepit. That's a kind word, believe me.
The club's 100 and plus years old at that
yeah.
point, right?
No. Yeah. So
the brownstone had some years on it.
It was in the building that we bought in 1917.
Oh, okay.
And so that was that brownstone mansion on Fifth Avenue. And when they built it in the backyard, they built what is now the gallery. So it was an empty backyard, and so they built 2 levels back there. A lower level that had 5 pool tables and the game room. These artists knew how to live. And then the upstairs of that was a big gallery, high ceiling and a glass ceiling, a big skylight. And that skylight had fallen in a heavy snowstorm in the 1950s. And so it was now just a tiled ceiling up there and antiquated lighting and bad air conditioners coming through the wall, steam radiators around the room, pipes. So that was fine in 1917, but not now. And so I said, can we use the funds that are maybe raised from the sale to begin a gallery renovation fund? And they said yes. So we had that show on. The opening night was the 2nd and 3rd of May in 2008. Fortunately, it was the spring of 8 and not the fall of 8 when the world
crash happened. Yeah.
And we
remember it well.
Everyone does. And we sold $412,000 of art that night.
Good. Yeah.
And that was so way back. That's 2008 money. So it was a very successful show. And the leadership of the club looked at me like, you can do this? And I didn't know. I was stunned. I was like, wow. Yeah. And it was really fun. And Darrell, I just copied every good idea that I'd seen at the shows out here. It was not that I was so smart or creative. I just stole every good idea. And I have always said that. It's not me. It was just that I had good examples to follow.
Right.
And that didn't hurt my reputation at the Salmagundi Club. And shortly after that, they wanted me to be chairman of the board. And so I was chairman for four consecutive terms, and until I was ready to leave New York in 2019. So it was a long and good run, and in April 1st of 2014, we did open that beautiful new gallery.
Yeah.
And it was spectacular. It was equal to any, and is equal to any space on Fifth Avenue.
Yeah.
That includes the Met. It's not as elegant as the Frick and some of those special rooms, but it was spectacular. And we did put in a skylight look. It was not a real skylight because that wasn't practical, both from a functional point of view and expense. But the lighting, when I met with so I was the leader in running the gallery renovation. I never dreamed all that stuff was going to happen to me. What the heck? But when I met with the architect and the lighting people, I actually started with the architect. I said, I'd like this to be about 3 things. I said, I want it to be about the lighting. And after that, the lighting. And after that, I wanted it to be about the lighting.
Then the lighting, yeah.
And it was about the lighting. And we are able to do any type of lighting. A lot of it's invisible under the glass ceiling, and we can wash the walls. We can have a show of 12 pieces of art in the entire room and just spotlight those. It's really magnificent what came of that. And it transformed the club, because then every organization wanted to rent our space for, whether it be the Oil Painters of America or all kinds of people wanted to come in there. It elevated the club back to where it needed to be in terms of that space.
I'm embarrassed I've never been there.
You shouldn't be embarrassed. A lot of people have not been there.
No, I've not been there.
You can't find it because you can't pronounce the name.
And you can't tell a cabbie where to take you. Been to New York, gosh, 5 dozen times, but
now you should be embarrassed. Yeah.
But I've never been to the Frick, been to the Met, been to the, all of those.
You got lots of time. You're a young man.
But it never was an invitation that I had.
Sure. And so
it's been on the radar.
To that point, it's a private club, but it's very open to the public. So even though it's a private membership club, we always have regular hours that during the daytime people come in and see the exhibits that are up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then we have a spectacular library. It's an amazing building. The building was built in 1853.
Wow.
By a coal mining family. It was a private mansion, double wide brownstone. And we were very fortunate to buy it in 1917. And the artists that we have the roster of donors, and we had an art auction, and like all of the guys from Taos donated paintings, Sharp, Kaus, they
Wow.
donated paintings to that auction, and the purchase price of the building was $75,000, and through that first auction and donations, we had $47,000, and shortly after that, we burned the mortgage. It was amazing, and there's no art organization in America that has a facility, a building like that.
Well, for those of you playing along, we're talking to Tim Newton, publisher emeritus of the Western Art and Architecture magazine, who was the chairman of the board of the Salmagundi Club back in the day, and getting caught up with him here at the Museum of Western Art. And we'll put a link down at the bottom to the club so that people who, a lot of people like to listen to a podcast on their laptop, and they'll click on it and listen as we go. Watch for those links down there. How do you get from being a kitchen remodeler to the chairman of the board of the Salmagundi, remodeling that, turning it into one of the great spaces out to Arizona, out to the West?
Yeah.
You made that move from Long Island in what year? 2000?
So we had lived on Long Island for my working life largely, but then I had an opportunity to get an apartment in Brooklyn Heights in 2010, I think it was.
Okay.
And I was doing a kitchen there, actually. And a great older lady had a house that she had 4 apartments in, or 6 apartments. And I asked about renting from her, and they were incredibly reasonable. And in Brooklyn Heights, about 2 blocks from the Brooklyn Bridge. So during most of the time that I was chairman of the board at the club, I had an apartment there that I could go to. We were living an hour and 15 minutes east of the city. So when I was at the club, driving back at 10 o'clock at night or 11 o'clock at night, it was great to have that space.
Long haul, yeah.
And we were living there, but having been born in the West, we always wanted to be in the West, and came west for all those art events, really more than anything else. And neither Kathy and I had much family that was around, and so we would come west for those purposes. In 2019, I finished my term as chairman, my 4th term as chairman, and we knew we wanted to come out. We had bought a little house in Santa Fe in 2003. It was just an investment house, a rental house. I was there to see Tucker Smith's show at Gerald Peters Gallery in 2003 at a one-man show, and Tucker kind of took me under his wing in 1997 when I first met him at the wildlife show in Jackson Hole, and we were nobody. We just were a couple of kids that we weren't quite kids, but it seems like that now.
Yeah.
And so we just started hanging with him, and so he had this big show in Gerald Peters Gallery in Santa Fe, and I went. Kathy said before I left from New York, she said, "Don't buy any more art," because I was just kind of incorrigible with that art purchase thing. And so I said, okay. And then I met with the realtor while I was there, and I said, "Can you just give me kind of the lay of the land?" And I spent 3 or 4 hours with the realtor, and had looked at this little house first. It was on the top of a hill close in town, and very small, 1,200 square feet. And I bought it that day. I called Kathy. I said, "Honey, I didn't buy any art." I did buy a house.
I bought a house in Santa Fe.
And she was, God bless her, she was okay with that. And so we still have that little place, and it's a sweet spot. It's more about the spot than the house, although the house is nice. And we rented that out full time, about 10 or 12 years, and then we furnished it with stuff from Craigslist, and we're able to go out there for some long weekends now and then and have other friends stay. We've always been, you're welcome to go and stay, Darrell.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah. I've tried several times, and you've always been in the wrong part of the country.
You can go if I'm not there.
So that's fine. You probably, I know you won't remember it, but you and I met in 2012, 2013 at the Jackson Museum thing. That's when you first went into my Rolodex, and I had you in there as art buyer, somebody who bought art, and we had met at the Jackson thing. It was a kind of a fleeting, casual conversation. But I was the director of at the Russell Museum at that point.
Yes.
Yeah, and we struck up a conversation about the Russell art and Russell, all of that.
Sure.
And so,
you were doing your job.
Yeah, I was schmoozing people, trying to
art buyer,
trying to
got a live one.
Try to get somebody to come to my show at that point.
Absolutely.
But that's when we first met with that. But then you left New York and came west officially, finally, in 2019.
So this goes to your first question.
Same
Then,
time I came here to the Museum of Western Art. Yeah.
So what happened? You said earlier, what does a publisher do? How did that happen? So Jared, who owns Western Art and Architecture, he and I have seen each other on the art trail for a long time and respected the magazine greatly.
Right.
And
talking about Jared Swanson.
He's the owner of Western Art and Architecture, and he's created a magical publication there. It's just wonderful. And I was talking with him, and he said, "What are you going to do when you go?" I sold my business to my business partner in December of 18, and I finished out my last 6 months
in New York.
Yeah. So I finished my last 6 months as chairman at the club, and we were going to go to Santa Fe. And so he says, "So what are you going to do?" And I said, I'm going to do some art consulting and maybe give some little tours of Santa Fe to galleries and museums to prospective buyers, and just counsel them if they're looking for historic native art, or if they're into cowboys and Indians, or if they want contemporary art. That sounded like a fun project for me to play with. And he said, "Why don't you become the publisher of the magazine?" I'm like, "Well,
what the hell does a publisher of a magazine do?"
That's exactly my word.
Was it?
It was like, what the heck?
Yeah.
What does a publisher do? But he knew that I was just knowledgeable about the Western art world. I'd just go to everything, all the museum shows and events and openings and whatnot. And so as much as anything, it was the knowledge that I brought, not about publishing, but about the art world. And that's really been a wonderful opportunity for me. And the magazine is the best magazine out there. And that's not necessarily me saying that's every time I meet anybody. It's just a beautiful publication.
It is. It's a nice publication.
The format it's oversized. If you haven't seen it, you have, your listeners here. It's an oversized format, and it's really it stays on people's coffee tables for years. It really does. And it's been an honor for me to be the active publisher for the past 5 years. And now I'm emeritus, and that means that I have less obligations, but I said, "I think I'm going to step down." And he said, "You can't." It was very kind. He's a great guy. And he wanted me to stay and consult and keep my name on the masthead, which is a huge honor for me.
I've been involved with the Western Art and Architecture for, a number of years through the museums. I was at the Briscoe for 5 years, 4 years, the C.M. Russell for 4, and now here. And so I've always had a connection to that magazine, because it's such a fabulous magazine. It's like you said, you go into all the finer homes, it's laying on the coffee table.
Yeah.
Sometimes it may be a 5-year issue, 5-year-old issue.
That's right. That's right.
Because they love the article that's in it, or a certain picture or cover or something. But all the greats are in it.
I'm active still in suggesting stories, and recently in a amazing and fine historic home in Santa Fe. And going to be doing a feature on that home. It's never been done. It's a gem. I'm out there, and it's great.
And for those of you listening at home, we're going to be putting that link at the bottom of this little article podcast page as well.
Good.
So people can go out there and see which one we're talking about. And a lot of the artists, most of our listeners, I know they know the magazine, and they know it well, because it's one of those absolutely go-to magazines for buyers and collectors and people like yourself. But you, over the years, though, have amassed a nice collection of Western art. You got the bug, like you said, and it bit you, and it never lets go.
That's right.
And your collection today, people talk about it. It's one of those talked about collections. You're constantly adding to it.
More slowly now than ever before. But
like a lot of people, when we begin to age, we're running out of walls.
No, it's true.
Jan and I are the same way, right? We've got pieces over the years that we've acquired, and now we go, where the hell are we going to put this?
That's never my problem, because that's my wife's problem. I let her do all the hanging. And so I just sneak some new artwork in and say, "Oh, that old thing. Yeah, where are you going to put it?" And she's brilliant with hanging the art. And it's been great fun. And it's a good collection.
We talk about collecting, though. The question I asked you last night during the Q&A part of your discussion was, should somebody collect because they want to invest?
No, not at all.
And the answer is no.
No.
I've said that to people.
Yeah, of course.
When they ask me that same question, you should buy what you love.
Absolutely. That's what you do.
You're going to reinforce that for me.
I am. But there is a category of collecting, certainly, that can be investing.
Sure.
And that's the deceased artists.
Russells and the Rungiuses and the Remingtons.
The Taos founders. In a blink. That's investment grade art. But anybody that's painting today and anyone that's collecting today of people who are painting today, that's not investment art. That's enjoyable art, and you should. And, you know, when you get people that have a stellar career like Scott Christensen and Quang Ho,
Right.
so that might approach that, but you should still never think that I'm going to buy this and I'm going to spend $20,000 and I'm going to begin to watch it appreciate. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Maybe in 20 years or something, but you just shouldn't think that way.
I'll never forget my mentor in this game is a guy named Charles Pierce, the Pierce Museums in Corsicana, Texas. And Charles and Chuck and Peggy were buying just lots of art for their museum, for their personal collection. And I asked him that question, should we be buying, because it's a good investment? He said, if we get a piece that does appreciate in value, that's great, but we should be buying what we love. And his statement was, if you can walk by a piece of art without wanting to stop and look at it, then you should probably get rid of it.
Good.
And I thought that, man, that always stuck with me, right?
That's right.
And I've carried it in my museum career. If I can put something on the wall that I don't have to stop and look at as I go through the gallery,
yeah,
then I probably shouldn't have it on the wall to begin with.
Absolutely right.
And end up buying, Howard Turpning, when he could buy a major Howard Turpning for $100,000. Huge amount of money back in the 90s, early 2000s. Today, that same painting's worth $1 million, $1.2 million. Mm-hmm. He was buying Russell letters for $5,000, and today they're worth $50,000 to $100,000, depending on the works. He was very good at that and very wise at that.
Yes.
But he always said, I don't do it for that.
No, that's the benefit. That's the frosting if it comes.
Yeah. And he always said that was why you don't do it. But you advise people all the time, because of your stature in the industry, about collecting. Who are those guys in the art world right now, especially the Western art market, that we should be watching for? Is it going to be too hard to name, or should you even try?
Probably shouldn't go there.
Shouldn't even go there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're going to, people ask me all the time, who are your favorites? And I can name the hot ones. Don Olsey right now is hot, and Mark Maggiore.
Right.
But then Riddick and Grant Redden, and a lot of the CA guys.
Yep. There's wonderful people out there doing wonderful work. Really wonderful.
But who's your favorite is going to be one of those kind of.
Not going to go there.
Not going to go there. Chicken.
Not on the microphone.
not on camera anyway.
But they know who they are.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful thing, because you establish great friendships with these folks that are just so skilled and competent. And I'd say, like a Quang or a Scott.
Let's talk about your friends, Scott and Quang, right? It's the reason you came to the Kerrville, Texas, is to see two perspectives, Scott Christensen and Quang Ho. And man, they're special.
They're special.
It really is.
They stand above the crowd. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And Scott's been painting those scenes of the West in Wyoming specifically, and more, as he said in his comments, as noted in his book, from east of Omaha, west to the Tetons and all. But he's been so good at those Wind River scenes.
Nobody does them better.
No, he's at the top of that.
I'm going to make you repeat what you said publicly. You said this was the best show in America this summer.
Yeah, it was the blockbuster show in America for the summer of 24 in the art world. And so I came, and I was able to validate that I was right, which I had never wondered. I knew. But
you hadn't seen the show as a whole, though. You'd seen parts and pieces.
Barely any. Yeah. But I just knew who we were talking about. It started with those two very skilled men. They're masters.
I think you'd seen a lot of the imagery, but yeah.
Yeah. So
you walked in last night or yesterday afternoon, around noon. I was watching your face, and you got to that point where it was one of those roll your eye moments.
A little teary, even though it was
crap.
Just, it's blockbuster.
Yeah. My problem is I look at this so much. I'm on my 4th year with Scott with this show, and 2.5, 3 years with Quang.
Yeah.
And I get too close to it. I wonder is it as good as Tim says?
Yeah, no, it was magical for me walking in and piece after piece of Scott's, and then the wild diversity of Quang Ho. As he told me early this year or this spring, he said, yeah, it's Scott Christensen and Quang Ho and his 39 friends. And of course it grew to his 49, 50 friends.
50 personalities of Quang Ho. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's people that were in the museum last night walking through before my talk. They were like, how can this one person do this and then this over here and then look across the room? And the diversity is wild and successful. one thing when an artist steps out of himself, every artist has their favorite genre or their favorite scenes that they do ad nauseum. I'm sorry, but true. And so he never gets bogged down in that. He's just out there because he's got that foundation of a great painter. Then he can experiment and play and come out with a very successful.
Yeah.
I really wonder, Darrell, if it's possible that there's anyone today painting so diversely, so successfully as Quang.
Right.
I doubt
He
it.
was a little tougher for me when I first met Quang. It was a little tougher to put him in a hole of some sort.
Right.
Right. I was easily calling Scott Christensen one of the great landscape painters.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what he does in the vein of Church
Right.
and the Hudson River guys and Moran, and Scott is one of those landscapists, and you can see where that spot is, even though he takes artistic license with a lot of works. But when I met Quang and first started seeing his work, who the hell is this guy? Where does he fit in that little niche? And finally, I just gave up.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really, it really is. Who is this guy?
I can't put him in a category.
No.
Right. And that's what I think makes this show so diverse. It makes it so really good, is that you've got the cleanness and the beauty of Scott Christensen's work. And then you've got sometimes this wild man approach to Quang. And
wild in the sense that it's so diverse, not wild paintings. There's a couple of those, but it's just his. And when I talk to artists, I say, be like Quang Ho. Don't be pigeonholed in a box. Be confident, go out there, do something that's a little wild and diverse, and that's very healthy for artists to do.
What advice do you give? Let's start with collectors, young collectors out there. How do they get started? I'm 25, 30 years old, got a little extra money maybe.
Yeah.
How do I get started in collecting art?
I think that it's just expose yourself to every opportunity you can to see art. For me, it was, I don't know if I'd been to galleries, but hardly. We went to the National Museum of Wildlife Art for their miniature show in Jackson Hole. And so that showed me museum shows. And so then we always went to museum shows. And so that advice today would be to go to Night of Artists at the Briscoe Museum and see a good sampling of the best that are out there. So I curate that show now, and a great honor for me to be at the Briscoe. But you've got the Briscoe, you've got Preta West, you have the Coors show in Denver, you have the Buffalo Bill show up in Cody, and take advantage of those, because that brings great art together, great artists, and it's just the exposure. And then you say, okay, I like to see the work of Grant Redden. And so where from that museum show where I saw it, where can I go to galleries? And then you start going to galleries. So those young collectors should be taking advantage physically, visibly, to see that work. You can read magazine. Now, that's really, my start was magazines, and I subscribed to everything. I was getting print catalogs. The print world has changed completely, but just look and you'll settle in on what you like. And I would just say that that first show, the miniature show in Jackson, was perfect for me because they were smaller pieces that I could almost afford. And it was so carefully curated in the beginning that I was going there, Sue Simpson, a good friend of ours, and Cody. And if you go to shows that are carefully and just curated with discernment, that will set you on the right path. There are a lot of shows that have good art, average art, pretty art, decorative art, cowboy on a horse, looks good, fun. But if you expose yourself to more curated events, you'll learn what's the really good art. Doesn't mean
I'm going to let you mention all of those other shows. And Briscoe, the Night of the Artist, I was one of the early directors of the Briscoe.
Yes.
Night of Artist is a show that I curated for in the very, very early years of it. I think it was in year 3 when I got a hold of it. And for 5 years at the Sky Room there in San Antonio at the University of Incarnate World, even before we had the museum. And so that one, and the Russell show you mentioned, of course, I've been to I'm going to let you mention all of those shows, but we've got to talk about the fact that this Museum of Western Art, has its own show. We have a show in April. Called The Roundup. And it's in its 42nd year. So
that's remarkable.
Yeah, for a show to do that for 42 years. So
absolutely.
we're real pleased with that. young collectors can come because our price points are going to be a whole lot better, a whole lot cheaper, if you will. I don't know, cheap, not better, but
I understand.
But you can get into the game,
right? And that's a great way to start
at a level that, because we're not trying to compete with Idols or Quest for West or the Prix de West or the Night of the Artist. Those, we jokingly call those big boy artists, big boy auctions, and
right.
But our little show, which is an exhibition and fundraiser for the Museum of Western Art, is a great way to get into.
It's very important for people to attend and to support those shows, and it does give a great opportunity for education.
Yeah.
You learn. Those young collectors, they can get in at price points.
I did something, Ivan, how important do you think this is, meeting the artist?
That's wonderful.
Our show is one of the things that we don't require it, but we really strongly encourage it, is that the artist be here.
Yeah.
Right. And we take a big group picture out on the back patio. And there's 50 artists, a lot of regional artists, a lot of national artists. Last year we had some of the greats, some of the really great ones here.
Oh, yes.
And a lot of regionals and we try to introduce new people as well, new artists, which that's part of our curation of it, is we're trying to introduce those people that you guys will steal.
Yeah, that's
a little later.
Yeah, we spot them at your show. And
I mean, I brought in Rachel Brownlee to give her one of her first national exposure things, and now everybody and their dog wants Rachel Brownlee, right? I mean,
that's how it works.
That's right. But she started here.
Yeah.
We're trying to do that with a lot of our shows.
Wonderful.
To give people that look. Yeah. But meet the artist, go to the shows, read the magazines.
That's it.
But more importantly, buy what you love.
And don't rush. Take your time. My first piece was in 1991, that Gary Carter piece that I bought from him. And this is a lot of years later, and it's just been one at a time. And you can't walk in to a gallery or a show with a big checkbook and just have an instant collection. You can, but it's not the right collection. So I wish I could do that.
It could be the right collection if you've got a great eye, or somebody.
It's all about that eye, and you can train your eye, and you can learn, and you just need to be not in a rush.
Yeah. Who are those artists out there that you've mentioned several of them? Gary Carter first came along, and you've mentioned Grant Redden several times, and Tucker Smith. Talk about your friends in the art business.
Yeah.
Quang Ho, Scott Christensen, Sherry McGraw.
One of my greatest friends, Sherry. When I left Salmagundi a few months later, Stephanie Birdsall and Sherry McGraw put together this scheme to put together a book for me. It's a giant leather folio book that is filled with tributes and too much good stuff. It's lovely. But then she invited artists to give a painting or a drawing for that book, and they're laid in. It's a big folio size, and artworks are laid in by some of the great artists in America. And
wow.
I'm a big maritime collector, so Christopher Blossom, Don Demers, original artworks that are laid into that. It's just, you have to be kidding me. When I went to the club and they tricked me into coming for another reason, and here's this room full of people and the presentation of this volume that is one of the singular volumes of art in America. And the painting that Sherry McGraw did for this is just mind-boggling. And it's a little frustrating because they're in the book, but it's a whole collection that you could hang, fill a room with. So I think of dear people, Stephanie, Sherry, Del Braybach, who got me into the club. Quang Ho has been very dear. Scott has been amazing. And so these are the things that make the list is so long. Josh Elliott, just a dearest guy. And it's a long and wonderful list, but that's what I say in the end of all things, that it's about the relationships, the art. I love my art a great deal. It's a seriously incredible collection now, but it's about the people. And
the way you get to meet those people is by coming to the Night of the Artist, by coming to the roundup at the Museum of Western Art, by going to the shows and the exhibitions.
And friendships develop. And it doesn't hurt that I ran American Masters at 10 years for the Salmagundi, because I was inviting them and they would come, and it was successful and they respected me. And so I was known in a way that a regular collector may not be known, but it's the best part of it for everyone, whether you're running an art show or not. It's just to know those people and have those relationships.
Talk to that young artist out there that artist who's listening to this podcast and trying to figure out how do you get into the good magazines? How do you get into the shows?
Yeah.
What do you say to that artist?
It takes time, and it's art. You look at any artist, really anyone, at their early work, and then as they go along for a few years, it changes wonderfully. And I think patience is a real key. You keep yourself out there and just plan every day to get better. And it really does happen. It's remarkable to see the progress that people make, and people notice. It's a visual thing. And so when I'm looking at someone and I see, wow, you've got great promise, and 5 years later, they're way down the highway. But it's just every day. It just
keep on doing it.
Kind of the daily grind.
It was one of my artist friends that said muscle memory.
Yeah.
Bill Kowick. Bill Kowick said he was advising young artists, muscle memory. He said just...
And draw.
And
draw.
Drawing
that's
is
a real foundation. Yeah. People go out and they'll go to a plein air painting weekend or something, and they think they're a painter. And they might be. But, drawing is really such a, and I know that there are places you go to learn about that stuff, to learn to paint, and they just have you draw for a couple of years.
You made a move recently, I don't know how recently it was, but to Cody, Wyoming.
Yeah.
Have a home there in Cody, and you sit on the board of one of the great museums.
Yeah, the Center of the West, Buffalo Bill Center of the West. Yeah, it's an honor for me to be there. And cool. We went to Cody. We moved to Santa Fe to our little place there, and it's 1,200 square feet, and we had 4 storage units and 4 climate-controlled large storage units.
Sure.
I said to Kathy, what we're spending in storage, we could just rent a whole house somewhere in Wyoming. And about 3 months after we got to Santa Fe, we rented a place in Cody. We were looking in Sheridan, Cody, and we had great people that we knew and knew us in Cody, and they said, no, you can't live in Sheridan. You got to be here. And it was lovely to be wanted. And we went to, the same year we left New York, we ended up in Cody. We rented for a year and looked around, and then we found an amazing old house that they say was built by Buffalo Bill for his niece in 1917.
Wow.
So we're not going to investigate that rumor too far.
Go with it. Yeah, put a plaque up.
If
make it true.
I love that. I never thought of a plaque, Darrell. By golly.
What was that old expression? When the truth and the legend collide, you print the legend, right? Yeah. You make it the truth.
That's
right?
so good.
I'm a storyteller by default. This is what I do.
Oh, yeah, no.
And so we're always, we tell people all the time that we're sitting at a table here in the library at the Museum of Western Art, and you're sitting at the very spot where Larry McMurtry wrote Lonesome Dove.
Whoa.
And that's true.
Wow.
But the story's better than the truth of it, and the reality is he came in early 80s when they had built this building. This library was gifted by Don Hedgesmith and others, one of the great writers. And McMurtry knew this collection was going to be a good source for him for his book.
Oh, yeah.
And he, he came in, he sat down, and our librarians would tell us that he would say, dear, might there be a book about wagon wheels? And they would pull all the books about wagon wheels, and he'd write notes and have them photocopy things and all of that. And he spends probably a week or 2 here now. But there's a coffee ring right there where your hand is that we call the McMurtry coffee ring.
I love it.
And that's part of that legend that grows. Absolutely. We should put a plaque up that at this spot Larry McMurtry wrote Lonesome Dove, the screenplay for Lonesome Dove. And so you should put a plaque up about Buffalo Bill's building this house for us.
Yes.
We're visiting today with our good friend Tim Newton, publisher emeritus of the Western Art and Architecture magazine. I almost mess that up every time.
It's a mouthful.
There's so many good ones out there, but Western Art and Architecture. And I've talked about a little bit about your publishing thing, but one of the next chapters for you is one that you're about to enter into for the first time, or you've entered into, and that is you're going to curate the show, The Night of the Artist, for the Briscoe Museum, a place that's dear and near to my heart. Had several of the Briscoe people in our audience last night to listen to you, get to see Jason and all of them. And it's a show that's dear and near to my heart. But talk about your plans for the Briscoe. And this is one of those podcasts where I'm not afraid to talk about other museums.
Oh, sure.
I'm a rising tide lifts all boats kind of guy. Right. I believe the better you do, the better I'm going to do. And
absolutely right.
We trade art a lot and ideas a lot. And we're going to stay true to who we are and what we're doing and do a great job of it. But the Briscoe Museum on the corner of Market and Presses Streets in downtown San Antonio, for those of you playing along at home.
It's an amazing spot they're in. I
It's
can't,
it's a great
that
museum.
site and the building's gorgeous. I didn't see that coming. I was happy at Western Art and Architecture and
Right.
doing my thing. And then knew Liz at the museum. She's a terrific CEO down there. And I was just giving her some comments about things. And then she said, let's do something more with this. I make it more official. And what are you talking about? And she enticed me to
I
take the
think it's
job.
important to talk about the curation of these shows. I curate the one here at the Roundup show and curated the Russell and curated the Briscoe when I was there. Michael DeShaman, when he was the director of the Briscoe, curated, basically worked with his curators and curated that show. But when he retired last year, Liz was appointed to become the new CEO, and she's fabulous. And it's a wonderful
I think she came
place.
there. She came when Michael came. They both
I think
came
they
7
came
years
the same-
before, I think, and they had their diverse duties. And
But
so
I think
really,
she
I'm
realizes
just,
that she wants somebody to help her curate that show and be a part of that.
and that's exactly right. And I'm just building on what Michael had done. It was a great show already. So the show is old. The show is 25 years, and the museum is older than the museum. I think
It is,
they
because I was
started
there.
that.
I was there in 2004, 5, 6. And it was in its second year or something.
So Michael had done a great job, and so I'm just building on what he did and what has been already. It's a wonderful opportunity for me. I will do some changes. I'm adding some artists that like Quang Ho and Scott Christensen. They're in the show coming up next year, and Grant Redden and Josh Elliott, and it's a big handful of America's top artists that are joining into the show. Curation is difficult because you have to tell some people that they're not in, and then you get to tell other people they are in. The show will grow and expand.
Yeah, we do that. We do that every year, though. We not kick out, but we set aside some artists.
That's right, and they can be rolled back in later, perhaps.
And
so
several of them do.
Yes, exactly. And so that's my mindset also. The other part of, and I realized after the fact that I've got a lot of friends that have said, you know what, you're running that show, and I'm gonna come in, and I'm gonna come down as a buyer, as a collector, and be there. So there are probably 30 different people all in that have said they're coming for the first time.
Right.
So one of my biggest missions there is to build a collector base, a new collector base. And we got Tim Lawson in the show coming up. We have people that are very successful, and we have to bring the buyers that will be knowledgeable about them. And one of the things I've been happy that you had your show here of Scott and Quang is that there'll be collectors that will be exposed to them here and say, oh, I can see them down in the Night of Artists.
And they can a month later see them here as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think both are going to contribute a work.
Good.
And we start out with a lot of artists at the quality level of Scott and Quang with one work. I'm not going to ask them to do a full show of 7
That
or 8
makes
works.
sense.
We do one work.
Yep.
We did that last year with several of the CA artists.
Yeah.
And one work is first time they're in the one work, and we sell it, and it becomes 3 works, and they sell it.
Yes.
It becomes more. And that's the way you have to kind of build these things a little at a time.
Right.
Our guest today has been Tim Newton, publisher emeritus of Western Art and Architecture magazine, and the curator for the Night of the Artist show for the Briscoe Museum in San Antonio, Texas. And Tim, we wondered if we were going to be able to talk 30 minutes, since it's been 56. So we appreciate you.
You didn't wonder, you knew.
We
But I tell you, it's been a really honor to be here at the museum.
appreciate
to be here, and you and I have had a good friendship for the recent several years, and it's been very nice to be here, and you do a great job.
Yeah, most people don't know, but Tim's also one of the top photographers in the country with your iPhone, which is amazing to me, right?
They're amazing cameras.
I went to Yellowstone recently, and I think I took more pictures with my iPhone than I did my
it's just so
Nikon, my
convenient.
big. You know,
Yeah, no,
it's just
exactly.
so good.
Thank you for that.
And
it was an honor to be in that show.
The guts I took to start taking pictures with my iPhone almost exclusively came from Tim Newton. So, but yeah, you were in that show with the 2 or 3 years ago, Heavens Declare.
It was wonderful. I didn't want to be in that show because I didn't feel qualified,
Well,
because
you're the
they were
only photographer.
painters,
Yeah.
and I was the only photographer, and that made me squirm. I just thought, no, I'm not an artist. I'm just.
Worked out wonderfully.
It did. It really did. And thank you again. It was a huge honor, and great people were in that show.
And so let's wrap it up by talking about the remaining few weeks. When this comes out, we'll have about 3 weeks left on Scott Christensen and Quang Ho, the Two Perspectives exhibition at the Museum of Western Art. It closes September 21st. Why should people come to Kerrville, Texas to see that show?
to see something like you never have seen before and may never see again in your life, because the work is so extraordinary and it's such a high level of quality. It's all about quality. You can put pictures up, but
Yeah, two comments struck me last night. One lady saying, asking where it was going to travel to next. It's not.
Right.
It's
unfortunate because it's worthy.
And that's what she was thinking, is that, man, this would be great.
It should go to the Met.
It should go someplace. That's good. And then another comment, somebody said they were surprised by the volume of works.
Right.
And it's not 8 or 10 good works at a lot of dogs.
This doesn't happen, Darrell.
It's 105 works.
What you did here doesn't happen to have that kind of scale. 50 paintings plus from each of these guys.
Yeah, 53 from Scott and 52 from Quang.
It's crazy, and it's a massive success.
I appreciate that. And thank you you said that on social media that this was the blockbuster show of the summer, and our phones started lighting up. So I called you last night an influencer, and I'm serious about that. You influenced a lot of people and have influenced me. And thank you for your time today. Thank you for being on It's Art. Let's talk about it.
Thank you.
And best of luck and success. And I'll see you in Santa Fe and Cody, probably Cody pretty soon.
Come on.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Good.
For you, those of you listening along, the podcast is sponsored by the Museum of Western Art, and it's a product of the Texas Hill Country Podcast Network. Talk about mouthfuls.
Yeah.
That's always a mouthful to be able to say that. We appreciate you for playing along, and thanks for joining us, Tim.
Thank you so very much.
Appreciate it.